Putin stated that although the Russian economy may have shrunk by 2.5% in 2023, it is doing better than anticipated. He also stressed the significance of accelerating real wage growth. According to Putin, the real economic dynamics were superior to what specialists had predicted. He even mentioned how the Ministry of Economic Development stated that the GDP fell by 2.1% between January and October of 2023. However, the economic impact of the Ukrainian conflict and Western economic sanctions has hindered the nation's capacity to export gas and oil as well as its banks and access to technology. The sanctions have backfired on the West by raising inflation and energy prices, but the government and central bank feel the economy remains robust. Beginning in February 2022, the EU imposed numerous rounds of sanctions on Russia. On December 5, there will be a ban on Russia's oil exports to EU members. On December 16, the EU expanded its blacklist by 141 more people and 40 legal entities, including 3 banks. Along with various export bans, they started the process of withdrawing airtime from 4 Russian television channels. In retaliation, Russia has increased the number of EU diplomats who are barred from entering the country. This includes the leaders of EU law enforcement organizations engaged in educating Ukrainian soldiers as part of the EU mission to aid Kiev militarily. Sanctions were also put in place against EU citizens who engage in systematic anti-Russian propaganda in public as well as against European state and commercial entities that produce weapons and military hardware and supply them to Kyiv. The ministry stated that a number of members of the European Parliament are also on the blacklist. The UN Security Council's legal authority is being undermined by these measures, according to the Russian Foreign Ministry, which declared that they will be met with a prompt and sufficient response. From December 5, virtually all seaborne oil imports from Russia are prohibited by the European Union. The price at which Moscow can sell barrels was also limited by the EU and the Group of 7 nations. Anyone who wants to use European ships, notably the enormous Greek tanker fleet, or obtain other essential services must sell their cargo for less than $60 per barrel. As a result, there are now fewer European-owned tankers shipping goods from Russia's western oil ports, and there are now more Russian-owned tankers transporting crude oil. Additionally, a shadow fleet of tankers has emerged as a result of the restrictions. According to rumors, this fleet is employed in Russian trade. Furthermore, the ownership of some of these vessels is unknown, which fuels more conjecture. The amount of crude oil exported by Russia by sea climbed noticeably and surpassed its April high. The overall volume of Russian crude oil increased by 30%, or 876,000 barrels per day, to 3.8 million barrels. Additionally, exports from the Baltic region rose by 626,000 barrels per day, and shipments from ports on the Pacific and Black Seas both increased. The country's 4-week average, which balances out the peaks and troughs in the weekly statistics, was likewise raised by this gain. The increase in the 4-week average was aided by the removal of a weather-related downturn in mid-December that caused weekly flows to drop by more than half from the calculation. It's important to note, though, that the increase in pipeline flows to Europe has somewhat countered the boom in shipments by sea. Additionally, because of the restrictions, deliveries to Germany have been stopped since the beginning of the year. Longer shipping transit times are a result of the embargo on importing Russian crude oil by the European Union. Currently, the average trip from Baltic ports to India takes 31 days, as opposed to just 7 days to Rotterdam and half that time to Poland. And this puts pressure on the few ship owners who are still ready to ship Russian cargo. Russia is becoming more and more reliant on its own ships as well as a so-called shadow fleet of older ships controlled by newly emerging, small, frequently unidentified enterprises. While the import restriction is in effect, European-owned tankers are still permitted to transport Russian crude as long as it is sold for less than $60 per barrel. However, fewer people do this. Additionally, cargo transfers from ship to ship in the Mediterranean have increased. In order to free up ships for operations in the Baltic during the winter, shipments are either combined onto larger boats or moved from ice-class tankers to other ships. Additionally, Russian oil tankers are hiding their final destinations from the public. On board the ships were more than 29 million barrels of Russian crude oil, or 1.05 million barrels a day. Additionally, they departed the harbor in the 4 weeks after October 13 without stating their destination. An updated data for the 4-week period that ended on October 6 indicates an increase in total seaborne exports of an average of 550,000 barrels per day. 3.058 million barrels per day on average over the last 4 weeks is the highest level since November. Additionally, the volume of shipments to Asia increased significantly while those going to Europe sharply decreased. In addition, Russia and Iran are considering using a Persian token backed by gold in order to get over the SWIFT closure and Western sanctions. According to Alexander Berznikov, the director of the Russian blockchain and cryptocurrency industry group, his nation is in discussions with Iran about introducing a digital token. He said that it will serve as a stablecoin, or a form of digital currency backed by a stable asset like gold. He continued by saying that by year's end, merchandise from Iran will start to arrive at a special economic zone in the city of Astrakhan in southern Russia. And it's expected to be the starting point for the Gulf token's widespread acceptance. Some of the largest undeveloped gold reserves are found in Russia. And the precious metal has continued to serve as the unofficial currency of the world for many years. According to Alexei Voilukov, vice president of the Russian Banks Association, dollar settlements are currently being conducted between Russia and Iran. Transactions must, however, be made in the respective national currencies of the two parties involved due to sanctions. Both Iran and Russia started using more of their respective national currencies in international commercial dealings last year. And they succeeded in doing so despite the sanctions the West had imposed on them. He went into more detail on how the spread of asset-backed tokens inside a larger network can help nations avoid Western sanctions. Furthermore, it gives individuals alternatives to the US currency, the euro, and the SWIFT financial system, which is helpful. This viewpoint was reaffirmed by Paul Gonkarov, cryptocurrency research consultant at Dezen Shira and Associates, who described the prospective creation of a Persian Gulf token as a tectonic change. He also cautioned that this would have a significant impact on both the value of the US dollar and central banks throughout the world. He suggested that the introduction of an asset-based token would seriously endanger the viability of current fiat currencies. A significant barrier in this approach would be the availability of a highly alluring safe haven alternative that cannot be weaponized against the owners and users of such tokens. Additionally, the recent improvement in ties between Russia and Iran makes it possible to construct almost any type of payment system. Early on Friday, oil prices increased by about 4% as a result of the United States' stronger position on the Western sanctions against Russia, adding to mounting supply problems amid worries about an escalation in the Hamas-Israeli conflict. The international benchmark, Brent crude, traded 3.50% higher at $88.99, while the US benchmark WTI crude increased by 3.63% on the day to $85.95. After the Hamas attack on Israel drove prices higher on Monday, both benchmarks were poised to post weekly gains. The weekly gain was however limited by concerns about an economic slowdown and a rise in US commercial crude stocks. After the Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, of the U.S. Department of the Treasury sanctioned two entities late on Thursday and identified as blocked property two vessels that used price cap coalition service providers while transporting Russian crude oil above the coalition-agreed price cap. Prices increased on Friday. The G7 and EU agreed to a price cap of $60 per barrel for Russian crude oil, under which shipments of Russian crude to third countries may use Western insurance and finance if the cargo price is at or below the $60 cap. The EU put an embargo on the import of Russian crude oil, and the restriction went into effect by the end of 2022. The US issued sanctions for a breach of the price cap for the first time on Thursday. In a statement, Wally Adeyemo, the Deputy Secretary of the Treasury, said that today's decision demonstrates our continued commitment to reduce Russia's resources for its war against Ukraine and to enforce the price cap. In spite of the turbulence brought on by Russia's unwarranted invasion of Ukraine, we are still committed to enacting a price cap strategy that has two objectives: lowering the oil earnings on which Russia depends to wage its unlawful war against Ukraine. While the market remains concerned about demand in light of high interest rates and sluggish developing economies, early transactions on Friday were dominated by supply-side concerns due to the US's stronger attitude toward Russia and the worry that the Middle East conflict may impair supplies there. What are your thoughts on Russia, and do you think they can overthrow the US economy? Let me know down below. If you want to continue to learn about business investing and financial education, we have got this video waiting on the screen for you to check out. Don't forget to give this video a like and subscribe for more videos like this. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.